Secret reasons for the collapse of the USSR. What led to the collapse of the mighty empire? 69 years. That's how long the Soviet Union existed after entering its final phase. Formed in December 1922, it collapsed in December 1991. Today we will try to figure out exactly why the USSR collapsed. Causes of collapse. There is a common myth that the collapse of the USSR occurred because of Mikhail Gorbachev. Another myth claims that Americans are to blame for everything. According to many political scientists, historians, and economists, the reasons for the collapse of the huge country are due to many factors. To truly understand the reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union, we need to do a deep analysis and not be content with myths and populism. It is best to divide the reasons for the collapse of the USSR into two groups, internal and external. Internal reasons. 1. Economic problems of the command administrative system. Robinson and Acemoglu's book Why Nations Fail examines two types of economic institutions, extractive and inclusive. The first type, closed and centralized, was characteristic of the USSR. A command administrative planned economy could produce results in the shortest possible time, as happened in the 30s, but was not capable of working in the long term. Confinement to the center led to technological lag. According to the authors, extractive institutions lead to the closedness of political institutions, and an attempt to change the economic model leads to changes in all spheres of society. 2. Priority to heavy industry. The USSR boasted that it had surpassed the United States in the production of cast iron. Its AK assault rifles were known throughout the world, and Yuri Gagarin became a legend. However, in the 70s, people got up at 6 in the morning to buy sausages, and dreams of consumer goods from socialist countries did not allow many citizens to sleep peacefully. While the technological revolution was taking place in the world, the USSR ignored mass consumer culture. 3. Bureaucracy. During the Brezhnev era, the nomenclatura became a separate class that allowed itself more than the rest. There is no need to mention gerontocracy in the Politburo. 4. State censorship. The authorities often tried to hide terrible events such as the Holodomor, the horrors of the Gulag, and the Chernobyl accident. When people found out about this, another disappointment in the regime followed. 5. The collapse of faith in communism. Alexander Ostrovsky in his article Stupidity or Treason points out that by the 70s people stopped believing in the bright future of communism. Slogans were uttered for show even by the top officials of the state. Nikita Khrushchev promised that communism would be built in 1980, and Leonid Brezhnev, realizing the impossibility of this, came up with an intermediate stage, developed socialism. 6. Iron Curtain for citizens. Listen to Vladimir Vysotsky's song instructions before traveling abroad to understand how difficult it was for residents of the USSR even to go on an excursion to bourgeois countries. 7. National question. With the collapse of the USSR, 15 republics declared their independence. In the USSR, they built an international society, creating the Soviet man, but national movements did not disappear. And against the backdrop of the economic crisis, the ideas my country, my resources increasingly arose. 8. The ill-conceived nature of many reforms. Many examples can be given, but Gorbachev's prohibition law is indicative. It dealt a huge blow to the Soviet economy since during the crisis there was a huge budget deficit. External reasons. 1. Cold War and arms race. The USSR lost the Cold War, which was an important but not decisive factor in the collapse. 2. Help to the countries of the socialist camp. The USSR provided colossal funds to keep the socialist countries in its camp, both in Europe and among young states. 3. Anti-communist movements in socialist countries. Since the 40s, protest movements have taken place in many socialist countries. Hungary in 1956, Czechoslovakia in 1968, Poland in 1976, and in the 80s. 4. Oil needle. In the 60s, the USSR created for itself the problem of oil dependence. The discovery of many fields helped to hide the problems of the economy. They even started buying agricultural products abroad. But in the second half of the 80s, oil prices fell sharply, which hit the economy. Progressive decay. Since the 80s, youth protests began in the republics. Yeltsin in 1986 in Kazakhstan. In 1987, a demonstration of the Crimean Tatars demanding permission to return to Crimea. In 1988, the Baltic countries began the Parade of Sovereignties, and in 1990 they announced their withdrawal from the USSR. They are joined by the Caucasus republics, and then Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Russia. The RSFR played a significant role in the secession of the republics from the USSR. With the election of Boris Yeltsin as head of the Supreme Soviet of the RSFR in May 1990, the largest republic of the USSR also set a course for sovereignty. Already in 1991, he achieved approval of the post of president of the USSR, and in June he was elected to this position. Key events to strengthen the power of Yeltsin and other regional leaders occurred in August 1991, when the conservatives of the Politburo, led by the State Emergency Committee, tried to seize power and declare martial law. Yeltsin helped prevent the coup. Thanks to this, Russia sought to take the place of the sole successor to the USSR, and with the signing of a new treaty with the former Soviet republics, maintain its influence in the region. After the putsch, some of the Soviet ministries are either liquidated or transferred under the jurisdiction of Russia. This finally forces the republics to defend the right to independence. For example, in Ukraine, presidential elections and a referendum on the issue of state independence were scheduled for December 1, 1991. At the beginning of December 1991, it became finally clear that the USSR was living out its last days. On December 8, 1991, near Minsk, in Belarus, the presidents of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus signed an agreement on secession from the USSR and the creation of the Union of Independent States (CIS). On December 25, Mikhail Gorbachev announced the end of the Soviet Union. For some, the empire fell. For others, the motherland